Well, it's my honor to take that privilege of introducing our chief guest. First and foremost, I know this is the moment we're all looking for, but most importantly, you got to put this into context. Honorable Minister was sat on a plane or a tarmac for 2 hours, flew cross country, got off the plane, and she's probably at a hotel and joining us. It's close to 10 o'clock. So the passion, the engagement, any other minister, I can guarantee you, hands off, will not be at this after that treacherous day. But we really, really appreciate her time and commitment. And our Akriti has been holding the fort here, taking notes for the minister. So we really appreciate her time too. So it gives me distinct pleasure of extending a very warm welcome on behalf of NACA to our chief guest, Honorable Ms. Sumana Shrestha. Really quickly, most of us know what she's accomplished as well as a bio, but in the interest of those folks who may not know, I would allow me to read her respective short bio. Hon'ble Sumana Shrestha is currently the Minister of Education, Science, and Technology for the government of Nepal. Before this appointment, she was a member of the Health and Information Technology Committee of the House of Representatives. Her multifaceted background in management consultancy, entrepreneurship, and activism in her academic achievements include an MBA from MIT Sloan School of Management in Boston and dual majors from Bryn Mawr College in Pennsylvania, underscores a versatile skill set. Under her guidance, impactful initiatives such as Carpool Kathmandu and Medication for Nepal have been launched, reflecting her dedication to sustainable progress and development. During a short tenure in Parliament, which has been short but very impactful, she's been an outspoken member on bills related to higher education reform. She's a very strong, passionate advocate for the global Nepali diaspora, hence her attendance at this meeting. And she really views the recognition of its potential of the diaspora to propel Nepal's comprehensive development. So given her background and credentials, we could not have picked a better speaker who's committed to the cause of higher education and also quite understands the diasporic issues too. We had requested a topical theme, which is from aspirational to action, reimagining higher education in Nepal. So I'm not sure how long she's going to speak to that respective theme, but we will have about 20 minutes for a question and answer discussion if she's willing to engage with the group. So without any further ado, it's my great pleasure to welcome Honorable Minister. The Zoom floor is yours.
Many thanks. Am I audible?
We can hear you and see you.
Perfect. I don't know where are we all joining from. So good evening, good morning, good afternoon, respective time zones. Many thanks for the introduction, Brijeshi. And many thanks, NACA, for inviting. Many thanks to Arati for inviting me here today. I think we've come a long way from organizing a lot of relief programs in Nepal after earthquake, after COVID. So it's an honor to be here. And yes, it's actually 4 hours at the airport, not 2 hours. That was 4 hours lost. But I'm very excited to be here. As you've mentioned in my introduction, I see diaspora as one of the main pillars for Nepal's development, similar to how I see technology. And without going into long belaboring aspect of the difficulties higher education is in Nepal, let me get straight to some of the points. From what I've seen as a member of parliament and from what I see as a minister right now, I think there is, on a fundamental basis, the what part is a bit clear. We need to rethink, we need to reimagine what higher education needs to be in Nepal. And this needs a lot more consultative, a lot more pragmatic, and a lot more need-based conversation on higher education. As I was coming in my hotel room, I got, there was a huge delegation of university professors from Sudur Pasim universities And they had a lot of administrative requests to make about given the hardship allowance that was cut back, about their promotions and grades. So this is the reality, it seems like, what we are facing. Then there is a lot more philosophical and practical debate about now that we are in a federal structure, how we go about creating this bill, Ucha Shiksha, higher education umbrella bill, that is in discussion, has not been tabled, and has got a lot of critical feedback from the academia in Nepal. That needs a lot more consultative approach. And I think that is an entry point for everyone who wants to contribute in this space to have a very vibrant academia to provide input. I think that defines the what part. That on its own is quite a challenging task. But from where I see, as a minister trying to implement things for about 40 days, 45 days, is the how part. How to part is probably more challenging, if not, or equally challenging, if not more. And there is the part about what are the, even suppose if we go with a particular modality, right? We know Tribhuvan University has 80% of all the national students. It's really big. It's not decentralized. It still has centralized examination system. It's not well resourced, etc. The how part about, so how many years are we going to give Nepal to rethink and restructure the higher education, which universities are going to be merged, which universities are going to be at a province level, which universities are going to be at a federal level, how are we going to fund, what is going to be the modality, these kind of questions that really would help shape the way I see higher education. That's the place where we are going to produce our next generation of leaders, next generation of top bureaucrats, our diplomats, our scientist who's going to lead various research institutions and initiatives. This is the part I feel in Nepal we have not had any practical conversation about. So what does it mean? How much is it going to cost? So this is the landscape, if I may, that I see. And this is an area where I would really need a lot of your support to help not just brainstorm the potential what, but also the how-to part. How do we go about a lot of aspects, given the political scenario, the coalition government that we are in, and the constraints that it comes with. So, I mean, I've not been an academic, but what I can say, having been in your shoes as a member of diaspora for 13 years, is it always looks worse than it actually is when you look from far away. But I would really request all of you, as you've been in the conversation, and I have worked with diaspora community in many different initiatives, and I know that in the heart of the heart, the love for Nepal is growing. But we also recognize there's a huge inertia that needs to be overcome, which means I'm gonna ask you, and I know this is probably going to be not Ainekura, but I'm gonna ask you to believe me when I say yes, it looks bad when you look at it from outside. There's a lot of political partisan politics that takes place, but one step at a time. I think with a very thought out perspective, it is possible to take care of these issues. I think people are getting very tired about unwanted political interference that has prevented academia from taking its true shape, where academia would produce evidence that would then feed into policy making, where academia would be a fertile ground for researchers to produce research, to innovate, and then spin out. I would really ask you to keep on believing in Nepal and the cause, and the fact that I think without the diaspora support, that gives connectivity to Nepal across the entire globe, and without the support of sharing best practices, it'll be very difficult. So your support will be very crucial. It'll be a big booster as we embark on this journey. Your network would be very important if we are going to set up very robust transnational research centers. And your support will be very important as we rethink and implement the higher education setup. Having said that, these are the works in place. At the ministry, my first decision was to remove Prime Minister and Education Minister from being the Chancellor and co-Chancellor, this automatic appointments. I am in Sudur Pasim because tomorrow there is convocation for the university, and the Prime Minister is also arriving tomorrow. Well, he's arriving tomorrow, I arrived today, and we have to chair he has to chair the Senate meeting. There's a lot of these ceremonial tasks that appears at the front, but it's via these positions that there is a lot of political interference as well that needs to be stopped. So my first decision was to get the process started. The process of tabling a bill from the government side is really long-winded, as I discovered. It needs to first be approved by cabinet, then it needs to go to Kanun Mantralaya, this law ministry, then it needs to go to Artha Mantralaya, finance ministry, then it goes to cabinet, then it goes to cabinet committee, and after approval from that, then it gets tabled in the parliament. The only way to remove these two political entities from having a say in a university is by removing them legally. I know there are these ideas floated around like, oh, why doesn't Sumana just resign? I can't resign from a Padena position. That would be silly because you just can't. It requires laws to be amended. So we've kickstarted that process in the ministry. The other thing that is in motion is there are important positions that needs to be filled. We had a small win in Tribhuvan University where the Vice Chancellor could build his own team. I think it's the first time after Kedar Bhaktamathina that this has happened, where Vice Chancellor has been able to independently select and build his own team of registrar and rector. And hope that is, I would say, the first step towards the reform agenda for Tribhuvan University. TU Seva Ayog that basically appoints professors or is involved in the promotions. I am chairing that search committee, but what I've done is I've formed a subcommittee filled with people who actually are professors, who've actually published, to then interview the potential candidates. And I have not engaged at all in the selection review committee, which means for the first time, the TU Seva Ayog member is going to be selected without the education minister being directly involved and delegating the authority to the subcommittee led by experts. So there are these initiatives that are already in place. Some have been successful, some are in work. And then in the upcoming, one of the things I noticed about our universities is, yes, there is a lot of political interference, but it's also true it does not get the resources it requires to have a robust research ecosystem. If it did, I would not be approached by professors time and again to have conversation about their ranks, to Shreni, or their allowance that gets cut, right? I think this is a practical problem that I have not seen that we've not paid enough attention to. The amount of research grant UGC provides, the amount of compensation university professor are paid, if you ask me, is not sufficient to actually have a very robust academia. So we also need to get to some of the root causes, which is why in the upcoming budget, I've asked sorry, I'm also getting direct messages. I just got distracted. I have asked to have all the researchers via the universities. We don't have an ethical review board like besides NHRC. We don't have a ethical review board that would give ethical approval for researchers, especially when it comes to social science or other areas that are not related to health. So these are in upcoming Niti Tatha Karyakram in the budget. We still need to see what gets removed once it gets finalized at the Prime Minister's office. I know these are not your super big overhauls, but one of the things that I'm very committed to is supporting the Vice Chancellor and Vice Chancellors with the reform agenda they have, pushing them towards more consultative process, pushing them towards being more aggressive in the reform rather than directly going and intervening, because then that goes counter to my first decision of removing politicians from interfering in what I believe should be autonomous entities. So I'll pause there. And what I would really request is if you have ideas, if you've got plans, please share when it comes to Higher Education Umbrella Act, bill that needs to be drafted, that is in drafting process. Let's have conversation on very specific. I might not know, for example, should we have polytechnic, or what's the difference between polytechnic and a big research institution? I might not know those details. I don't know because I don't come from academia, but you know that. You know the differences, you know the nuances. So my ask is, my humble request is, let's have a very constructive, collaborative dialogue to actually have a open, pragmatic discussion about the what and also how to. So with that, I'll pause, Dr. Thapa, and I do have about 15 minutes hard stop, and then I need to go back and meet with people who've been waiting to meet with me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and really appreciate your insights and perspective, and more importantly, your gift of time at this stage of the day, and you have another meeting after this. So kudos to your passion and drive to really roll past this day. So really quickly, is I'm sure our members have some questions for you. So they will be listing in the chat box. We've asked them not to directly message you, so you can ignore those messages, and we'll take it on a public platform. We understand the what, understand, of course, the how. I like your optimism in terms of there's a lot of silver linings whatever you read or you see, focus on the low-hanging fruit and we'll get to the top. So I like that. And of course, the ask. What is the ask? Is the idea of evidence-based research for policymaking. And I like the term staying committed to the cause. We in academia, we understand higher education, the passport for quality of life, community of life, also being able to share our best practices. And early on, while you were traveling, we were discussing some of the reform agenda and some of the things you've already covered in the context of removal of ceremonial posts, transparency and appointment of leadership at the university, self-governance and self-determination of leadership within these universities to be able to assemble their team to lead the university, looking at the whole idea of merit-based versus politically based. So I like that idea, and I think we all share that concept in which, may the best person be in charge of certain things. And of course, a lot of us are faculty and administrators, and we really applaud the concept of really focusing on the faculty themselves, not on the leadership also, but the faculty in terms of pay, in terms of equity, in terms of providing them resources for research, as well as articulating a pathway that is transparent for promotion purposes. Also, another aspect we deal quite often is when our faculty or when our colleagues go to Nepal to do research, the IRB issues, whether social science as well as in the health science, we really face a lot of opposition, obstruction rather, in terms of how to go and conduct research from a collaborative basis. So all in all, is a question I have for you, then we'll go down to the community, is how can the Nepalese academic diaspora in the US, what are 2 or 3 really tangible things we can work on from a low-hanging fruit and then moving up the chain? What are some things that you would ask us from our organization?
I think my concrete ask would be we've got a lot of people who understand Nepal. How do we create a process by which we can have you all take a sabbatical year, maybe 6 months off, maybe a year off, and come work directly and teach. That's one area that I would really like to explore. Dr. Thapa, did I answer your question? I think I did.
Yes. To a certain extent, yes. In terms of what are some concrete steps we could do. Of course, we can't climb a mountain besides taking some baby steps,
I mean, one of the things that I feel happens a lot is, so I'll state from where I see what happens. My inbox gets flooded with ideas from various people. The sheer process, and I'm sure you've seen it if you are sitting and if you are giving out grants and you've got a lot of people who apply, you've got a whole spectrum of ideas. You actually need a full team to go through, assess the merit of the ideas, right? That is actually the first very concrete low-hanging fruit that I see that you could provide. Assessing, like collecting these ideas, assessing its merit, really putting this practical lens to it, and then filtering, and then we really identify and go ahead.
Great. Appreciate that response. So we got some questions. One's from Dr. Sandeep Shrestha. He's been involved in screening of cervical cancer research for the last 15 years. And this is his passion question. He always asks everybody who will help him out. NHRC and ERB processes, which you mentioned, need some attention to make research easier and collaboration possible. So are there any reforms on that aspect that you are working on?
Right. So that's something I mentioned earlier as well, which is we have NHRC, and I think TU just started Ethical Review Board. It's very new, but I think it needs to be outside of TU, and it needs to be an independent ethical review board that would allow um, for a more conducive collaboration and easier collaboration. I think that's the first part. And then the second part that I think is, well, the reason I know this is because we discussed this in the cabinet committee is the Nepal Census Office is coming up with a few guidelines on what kind of data and what kind of data can be collected as researchers apply. I think harmonizing that and making it more open to different kinds of data, and making, once the data has been collected, you go through the entire anonymization process, etc. But then you make those data accessible for other people to use and build upon. So these are some of the conversations that are in process. But again, I could really use help to help think about how it should look like, where it should sit, how we form the committee that sits on that review board. That is the area where I could use a lot of support.
Thank you. Thank you for being willing to engage with us. On that note, as one of the members, Mr. Shyam Sarma, he's indicated as, we're not in the interest of drafting legislation or interference within the country itself, but we're more from a technical advisory role. If there is a need for the higher education bill to finish the past the finish line, if there's any interest for us to take another look to assist or provide more data to really push this further, we'll be more than happy to provide that expertise based on our membership base.
Super. Yeah, higher education umbrella bill is in discussion phase. So it could really use multiple rounds of consultation. Yes, that'll be fantastic. If NACA wants to help, then it'll be fantastic. I'm more than happy to engage. I mean, I'd be grateful if you could actually take some time to review it and give critical feedback.
Great. In the context of research, I know you use the word research quite often, and this is one area in which I think we can provide a lot of research assistance. I know we have a NAST as well as other research centers in Nepal. Is there a mechanism in which these collaboration could foster between these Nepali academic centers and centers that we have at our universities? And how do we facilitate that mechanism?
I don't know exactly how to facilitate right away, but I do know that that needs to be one of the, goals as we think about improving the research landscape. One of the goals for upcoming year is to really strengthen the existing research centers like CERID or RICAST or NARC. What actually is missing within the country, even before we look outside the boundaries, is collaboration between these research entities, how they are staffed, the process in which the faculty that wins the grant proposal is allowed to spend. I think there's a lot of work in these nitty-gritties. When I have discussed it with professors, we basically, okay. What I have been told is if I am a faculty, I get an international grant, I have to take all that money, deposit it in a sub-account, and then in order to release that amount, then I have to go to bureaucracy, which is a long process to get it released, right? I don't know if that's the same process that you have in your research institutions? What are the practical ways to make it easier for researchers once they've already won a competitive research grant to be able to spend in the way they need for their research, right? I think we are working in fundamentals here. So again, to answer that question, Brigeshri, would be, tell me what are the different modalities that aligns researchers' time that the researcher contributes to that particular research, and the time, I mean, I'm expecting the researcher is also a faculty. The faculty spends time with the students. What is the correct incentive mechanism to put in place so that we are very clear what we are going to get out of that particular faculty? I think we need to work in these fundamentals. And then the next step would then be, so once these fundamentals are set in the country, then how do we look outside?
Well, thank you for that response. I know we're pretty much out of time. A last ask from us is, we have several executive committee members. We've come back and forth from Nepal. I know you are a very busy lady in Nepal. Is there any way, if a member or executive council member were to be in Nepal, can they get an audience with you to share some ideas? Would you be amenable to that aspect?
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be fantastic to actually discuss this Higher Education Umbrella Act. And I think it needs to be more than a 15 minutes meeting. I would love to set a very clear agenda. Let's build it together. And really let's get very straight to the business and help me identify. So here is a clear ask from my side, right? I've got 3 people in my ministry that oversees all the legal aspects, be it making Karyavidi, be it making Niyamavali, Nirdesika, drafting laws. There are 3 people for the entire ministry. So when you come with ideas, one of the practical reasons it gets stuck is there's not enough legal support to figure out how to take that idea and turn it into the legal language, and also check whether it fits with the existing legal framework. So my ask is, I'm sure there is somebody from the law in Nepal that can help take your ideas and do the first test to see, is it in conflict with the existing law? What needs to happen in order for that idea to happen? I think that would be my ask. When we have that meeting, let's have very practical meeting to a point where we want to get there. And in order to get there, we did, we hired somebody for a month to do a review, and these are the specific laws that needs changing. Otherwise, with the current resources that I have, which is 1 Upasachiv and 2 Adhikrits, it will be really lost given the amount of laws and regulation that needs updating.
Thank you very much, and it really fits to your theme. Your clarity in the ask is being consultative, pragmatic, and needs-based. So this kind of puts it all in a nutshell. So most important, on behalf of NACA, we are very blessed to have you at that position. And please reach out to the diaspora anytime besides the bill. We're here to provide any assistance that we can. You need rest, and we want to thank you, and have a good evening. Have a good weekend.
Thank you. Bye. Thank you very much, Aarti, for inviting, and thank you, NACA team, for having me
It's an
over.
honor. Thank you
Bye.
so much. Really appreciate it.